We assume that other people see the world the same way that we do. We assume that they feel the way that we do and are motivated by the same things that motivate us. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but we don't extend that same grace to others. The problem is that when we stay stuck in our own perspective, we create all of these stories about other people's intentions, and most of the time we're completely wrong. And all of these wrong stories that we're telling ourselves are creating unnecessary conflict. It's hurting feelings and it's causing disconnect in our relationship. Hi, today I'm going to be talking about the 6 strategies that will change your relationships forever. And make sure to stay until the end because I'm going to be sharing the top 3 things that are going to change for you when you apply these strategies. I want to start with saying something that's going to make me sound like a crazy girlfriend, but stay with me because it's all going to make sense. And I'm not going to sound so crazy at the end, I promise. I was in a relationship and I constantly felt like my needs were not being met. I was asking for more attention, more affection, more effort, more reassurance, and more time. And when I didn't get that, I got a little frustrated and may have been a little bit demanding. In my head, to me, I was just finally speaking my desires. After years of people-pleasing and never speaking my truth, I thought I was just finally sharing what I needed. I even started using nonviolent communication where I don't make the other person wrong. I just express how it would feel for me if I could receive this or how it feels for me to not receive it. I was trying to be as loving in the ways that I asked as I could. I was thinking that because I have this desire, I was just being brave and bold by asking for what I was needing and that he should just meet me there. Our relationship ended just a little under a year ago when he told me that he just doesn't have the capacity to meet my needs, therefore we are just not compatible. And it wasn't until a month or so ago that I thought to look at our relationship from his perspective. And I looked at our relationship through his eyes. And I honestly believe that if I had done this while we were still together, that things could have been a lot different. Granted, I can't change his capacity or his ability or our compatibility, but I could have changed my perception. I could have felt better about the whole situation and not been so hard on myself and him. Maybe if I had approached it differently, then he might have been more receptive to what I was asking for. What I do know is that taking what I know to be true about him and then taking that information and looking at the situation or our relationship through his eyes, I would have felt controlled. I would have felt like I was being suffocated by all of these demands. I would have felt very overwhelmed by everything that my partner was asking for. And I would have been frustrated because I would have felt like nothing I ever do pleases them. This moment of perspective shifting changed how I saw that relationship, and it will forever impact how I approach my future relationship. We spend so much time stuck in our own perspective, own point of view, that we forget that there's a whole other person, a whole another human being with their own life on the other side of every interaction. They have their own fears, their own triggers, their own way of seeing the world. And when you learn to genuinely see through someone else's eyes, not how you would feel if you were them, but how they would feel based on what you know to be true about them, it's like you unlock a superpower for deeper connection, better communication, and you get rid of a whole lot of unnecessary drama. So today we're going to be diving into the other side of perception, which is empathy, and how understanding someone else's inner world can completely transform all of your relationships. Most of us walk through life completely trapped in our own perspective. As a survival mechanism, your brain is literally wired to prioritize your own experience. From an evolutionary standpoint, you needed to be super focused on what was important for your survival in order to stay alive. But this causes problems in relationships with other people because we assume that other people see the world the same way that we do. We assume that they feel the way that we do and are motivated by the same things that motivate us. At least I know I do, but psychologists call this the false consensus effect. Basically, we overestimate how much people agree with us and that they share the same perspective as us. In the last episode on the power of perception, I mentioned a texting example when someone is taking a long time to text you back. If you've missed that episode, make sure to check that out. You can find that in the playlist in the show notes. When a partner doesn't text you back, you might start spiraling. You might think to yourself, they just don't care about me, or they're mad at me, or I've just done something wrong. But you're assuming that they assign the same meaning to texting frequency that you do. What if they grew up in a family where everyone gave each other space? And texting frequency has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not they prioritize you. Maybe they're processing something right now and they need time to process. They need that time alone. Or maybe they are just busy and it has nothing to do with their feelings for you. Or let's say a friend cancels plans last minute, and you think to yourself, wow, they really don't value me or our friendship. But this is you interpreting their behavior through your lens, not theirs. Maybe they are overwhelmed and canceling is their way of trying to be a better friend by not showing up in a bad mood, knowing that they wouldn't be in a good mood and that you wouldn't have a good time with them anyways. Did you know that there's something called a fundamental attribution error? When we do something, we attribute it to the situation. For example, I was late because I was stuck in traffic. But when someone else does the exact same thing, we attribute it to their character. And so we immediately assume that they're late because they don't respect you or your time. We give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, but we don't extend that same grace to others. The problem is that when we stay stuck in our own perspective, we create all of these stories about other people's intentions, and most of the time we're completely wrong. And all of these wrong stories that we're telling ourselves are creating unnecessary conflict. It's hurting feelings and it's causing disconnect in our relationship. When we actively try to understand other people's perspectives and have empathy, we are actually rewiring our brain to have more empathy and more compassion. Empathy is a skill that you can develop, and it gets easier the more that you use it. People with secure attachment styles are a lot better at seeing other people's perspective. And this is because they learned that other people have their own internal world. People with anxious or avoidant attachment styles might struggle to understand this. And this is because they are either way too focused on their own emotional state or too disconnected from emotional states in general to be able to truly understand this other person's perspective. I know for me, I always have tended to be more anxiously attached. I'm working on becoming more secure, but my default is anxious. So anyways, I was anxiously attached, and so I was always just focused on my own emotional state. And I only cared about how I was impacted. I wasn't taking the time to see things from his perspective. Like I shared earlier, I was always asking for more. I needed more time, more love, more romance, more effort, more communication, more conversations. And like I said, in my mind, I was just finally communicating my needs clearly and lovingly, or so I thought. I thought I was being healthy and just direct and communicating what I needed in that relationship. And so from my perspective, it felt like I was just asking for basic love and affection. And I would think to myself, why is this so hard? If he really cared about me, he would want to make sure that I felt loved and adored. And so when he didn't respond the way that I expected him to, I then told myself things like, he just doesn't care about me. I thought that he just wasn't trying hard enough, so therefore he just really doesn't love me. And I began to just analyze all of his behaviors, and it left me feeling pretty anxious and crappy about myself. I never once stopped to think about how this might be affecting him. I was so focused on getting my needs met that I did not consider his own experience. I didn't even think about how my requests were making him feel. It wasn't until months later that I had this aha moment, and what changed was I started thinking about him as a person. I started thinking about what I know to be true about him and his personality. And I took that and I applied it to our relationship. This was a guy that valued independence and felt overwhelmed by too much emotional intensity. This was a guy that struggled with a fear of being trapped inside of a relationship because of a past experience that he had. He grew up in a family that didn't necessarily talk about things, and so he struggled with being vulnerable. And so to him, my communication about my needs probably just felt like constant criticism. He always felt like he just wasn't good enough, like he just couldn't ever meet my needs. And he felt pressure to be someone that he wasn't. So this person that I claimed to love was left feeling criticized, controlled, suffocated, and just inadequate. While I was just there thinking that I was being emotionally mature by stating my needs. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not saying that it was wrong that I had needs or that I shared my needs. My needs were valid. I had a reason for my needs, but what I could have done differently was how I approached him. I could have found ways to get my needs met that worked for both of us. I could have been a lot more loving and a lot more understanding and patient. If I had looked at the same situation from his perspective, I would have handled it a lot differently. I would have given him a lot more time and space to process. I would have been more understanding and compassionate of his needs as well. I would have taken the time to look at some of my actions and my behaviors and looked at them through his eyes, and I would have done things differently. Because looking back now, I imagine it felt very controlling and suffocating and overwhelming for him. We both had different needs within that relationship. Neither of our needs were wrong. The healthy thing would have been for both of us to have practiced more empathy and more understanding of the other person's needs. If we had both taken the time to look at our relationship from the other person's eyes, from their perspective, I feel that we both would have shown up much differently. We could have handled it so that way we were both left feeling seen, heard, valued, and empathy isn't just feeling bad for someone or imagining how you would feel if you were in their situation. True empathy is the ability to understand and share someone else's experience from their perspective. Empathy isn't, I feel sorry for you. That's sympathy. Empathy is, I understand why you feel that way based on who you are and your experiences, and I can actually feel what you are feeling. The most powerful thing you can do to shift any relationship is to actively try to see the situation through their eyes. Take into account their personality, their history, their values, their current stress level, and their current ability or their capacity, and then use all of that to shift how you are looking at this situation or this behavior. Behind every request is a need. When needs go unmet, we feel unseen. We feel like we don't matter and that we're just not important. We may even feel that we're not loved. I know that's how I felt in the relationship. I felt like I just didn't truly matter. I wasn't a priority. When looking back now, that is not true at all. Behind every behavior, there is an emotion driving it. When we can connect to and truly understand the emotion behind the behaviors, then we can truly see the other person. And we can connect on an even deeper level with others when we can master this. So when your partner is being distant, instead of immediately going to, they don't love me, I've upset them, I've done something wrong, you can instead say, they seem very overwhelmed right now, and based on what I know about them, when they're stressed, they tend to withdraw so that they can process things internally. So I'm gonna give them the time and the space that they need, and I trust that when they are ready, they will come back, and I'll be here when they're ready. And just as a small note, this is not about excusing bad behavior. We're not going to tolerate someone abusing this privilege. We're not going to let someone disappear for days on end constantly, right? At that point, we can be like, okay, this is who you are, and that just doesn't work for me. Nothing wrong with it, but I need to find something that is a little bit more consistent. From a neuroscience perspective, when we actively engage in taking on someone else's perspective, it actually calms down our amygdala. And then when this is calm, we're gonna go out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And then when the amygdala is offline, guess what comes back online? Our prefrontal cortex. And so we're going to be able to regulate our emotions better. We're going to be able to have reasoning and understanding instead of just having fear-based assumptions that are fueling our anxiety. And so empathy doesn't only help you understand others better, it's actually going to make you a lot less reactive when you're triggered. And so then you're going to be able to be a lot more thoughtful in your responses, because ultimately we were pretty good together. So if my partner had been able to truly understand that my need for reassurance wasn't neediness, but was instead my response to what I perceived was a threat, then I feel like he could have truly understood me on an even deeper level. I took his withdrawal as a threat to our relationship. And so I would reach out for connection because that made me feel safe and secure within the relationship. And so when we can start seeing people through this lens of empathy and understanding, it not only improves our relationship, but it makes us more emotionally intelligent. It makes us more compassionate and just a more secure person overall. Okay, so by now you might be saying to yourself, okay, this all sounds nice. I would love to have more empathy, but how do I do that? And like I said earlier, we prioritize ourselves. And so we are always just stuck in our own heads. And so it can be really hard to learn how to take a step back and to put yourself into someone else's shoes. And it's gonna take a lot of practice to make it be a default or an automatic thing that you resort to. So I'm going to give you the 6 strategies that will help you be able to practice having more empathy and understanding. These strategies will help you to be able to shift your perception so that way you can see this event, see this person, this behavior, whatever it is, from the other person's point of view. The first strategy is pause before you react. Notice when you're triggered or frustrated or feeling hurt by someone else's behavior. The next thing you're gonna do is take a breath and then ask yourself, if I were them with their personality, their history, their current circumstances, and their capacity, how might I be experiencing the situation? An example of this is, say your partner didn't help with dinner, and so you're left feeling really unsupported. Instead of immediately going into they're just lazy and inconsiderate, you could pause and think to yourself, they seem really exhausted from work. They might not even have noticed that I needed help because they're feeling really overwhelmed and tired right now. Or maybe they didn't offer to help because they didn't think that they could actually be of service. They thought that they might just get in your way, and so they thought that they were helping by just staying out of the way. And so that leads me into the next strategy, and that is get curious about their story. Instead of making assumptions, ask them questions. You could even say, hey, I noticed you seemed really quiet tonight. Is everything okay? Can you help me understand your perspective on this situation? There's research that shows that when a person feels understood before they're criticized, they are way more open to feedback and they're a lot more willing to compromise and work with you. The next strategy is to consider their attachment style. Someone with an avoidant attachment style might show you love by giving you space when you're upset. They think that they are just being supportive and loving towards you, but you take it as abandonment and rejection, and then they just don't care about you. The next strategy is take a look at what is currently going on in their life. People's behavior is largely influenced by what is going on in their life. Ask yourself, do they have the capacity to show up for me in the way that I'm needing right now? Do they have the ability? Maybe they don't have the tools or the skills to meet you where you're at, and they can't meet your needs, and that's okay. Maybe this person is dealing with family issues. Maybe they haven't slept well all week. Maybe they have a lot going on at work. All of these factors are going to influence how they are showing up in the relationship with you. And understanding all of this makes it feel a lot less personal for you. You're not going to be left feeling so hurt and betrayed when you can see the whole big picture. The next strategy is pretend that you are the other person. Consider their way of processing emotions, their current stress level, their personality traits, and their communication style. And before you respond to a behavior or an event that has triggered you, stop and ask yourself, if I were this person, how would I interpret what just happened? What would I be feeling? And what might I be needing right now if I were them? Okay, so the last strategy number 6, is to practice having generous assumptions. So instead of assuming the worst about someone's behavior or intentions, practice assuming the best. Most people are doing the best that they can with the resources and the knowledge and the skills that they have in that moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you want to cheer yourself, consider the good qualities of your companions." He understood that how we choose to see people literally changes our experience of being in relationship with them. I feel like this is one of the lessons that's always learned in hindsight after a lot of pain on both sides of the relationship. When we are able to consistently practice taking on another person's perspective and seeing things from their point of view, we're going to be able to stop taking things so personally. When we can understand that most people's behavior is about their internal world and has nothing to do with you, you're going to be a lot less reactive. Your partner's bad mood does not necessarily mean mad at you. Your friend's cancellation doesn't automatically mean that they don't value your friendship. You're also going to become a lot better at communication. So instead of saying, "You never listen to me," you can instead be like, "I'm feeling really unheard right now. I'm noticing that you are really distracted right now. And I'm wondering if we can schedule a time where you have more capacity to sit down and talk about this with me." And they're going to be a lot more open and receptive to talking with you. The energy that you approach any situation or challenge influences the outcome. We can even ask, "Can you help me understand your perspective so that way I can understand you better?" Thirdly, we're going to be able to be a lot more secure in ourselves because we're not taking everything so personal. We're not constantly interpreting other people's behavior as evidence of our worth. And so we're going to be able to show up a lot more authentically because we know that whatever is going on with this other person has to do with their internal world, and we just make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. When we are truly and authentically practicing empathy, people are going to feel that. They will feel seen and accepted by you, which will make them a lot more likely to open up, to be more vulnerable, and be willing to work through conflicts constructively. When you work to truly understand them, they will in turn return the favor and will begin to try to truly understand you. Empathy is contagious. This is not just about romantic relationships. This works with friendships, with coworkers, with strangers. When you start seeing people as complex human beings doing the best that they can with what they have, instead of them just being obstacles to getting what you want, your whole experience of them changes, and that will change everything. You become someone that people want to be around because you make them feel accepted and understood. And this is the core of everything. We all want to be seen and understood and accepted for who we truly are. Most relationship problems aren't actually about incompatibility or a lack of love. They're about misunderstanding. They're about two people trying to connect but speaking completely different languages. And it's too late for my relationship, but I'm hoping that this information will help to be able to save yours. Here's your challenge for the week. Pick one relationship in your life where there's been some tension or some misunderstanding. And instead of focusing on how their behavior affects you, spend some time really considering their perspective. Ask yourself, what might be going on in their world right now? How might they be interpreting this situation? And what might they be needing that they're just too afraid to communicate to me right now? And how can I provide that for them? If you're needing to have a really difficult conversation, you could frame it as, "Can you please help me understand your perspective on this? I want to make sure that I'm seeing the whole picture before we figure out a solution." So that way I know that we are both going to feel good about this by the end of our conversation. And again, this is not about becoming a doormat or ignoring your own needs. This is about becoming someone who can navigate relationships with wisdom and compassion. It's about being someone with the skills that are necessary to truly connect with a person and to be able to truly see them, hear them, and value them. You're never going to find a perfect relationship. There will always be challenges and difficulties. It's about how you navigate those challenges, and it's about the energy that you bring that will influence the outcome. Being able to see it from their perspective will help you to be able to navigate it a lot more efficiently and effectively. I would love to hear from you. What is one relationship where you're going to practice seeing this relationship from the other person's perspective? Taking what you know to be true about them, their character, their personality, their internal world, and using that and applying it to your own relationship, to the situation, whatever it is. I want to hear how things shifted for you in your relationships this week. Maybe your partner opened up a little bit more to you. Maybe a friend was able to be a little bit more vulnerable with you. Remember, empathy is a superpower. And when you can truly see through someone else's eyes, you gain access to deeper connection, better communication, and way less unnecessary drama in your relationships and friendships. Thank you so much for watching today or listening, wherever you're tuning in from. Thank you for giving me your time and your energy here today. Thank you for seeing me and hearing me. I truly value each and every one of you. Make sure to like, subscribe, or follow, whatever that looks like for you on whatever platform you're on right now. Make sure to hit the notification button so you don't miss any future episodes. My next episode, I'm going to be talking about how the path forms as we walk it, and why starting messy is where all of the magic lives. So if you have been feeling stuck or too afraid to start on a project or go after a dream of yours, you'll want to tune in next week. I hope you all have a fabulous week. As always, I'm sending you so much love. Bye for now.